Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right in to bridge that frustrating gap between stiff textbook Japanese and actual natural fluency. We are tackling three absolute JLPT N4 staples that constantly, and I mean literally constantly, trip up learners. Why? Well, because as English speakers, we have a really bad habit of mashing words like by and until into the exact same category, or we just throw the word like at absolutely everything. But in Japanese, yeah, these concepts function completely differently. So we're going to be looking at marine, mitai, and those extremely common modifiers mitai ni and mitai na. These are your absolute essentials for expressing deadlines and visual descriptions accurately. If you've been wanting to move from sounding like a textbook to sounding much more like a natural native speaker, I promise you, these grammar points are your new best friends. Let's dive in. Here's our roadmap for today's deep dive. 1. Sounding like a native. 2. Deadlines versus durations. 3. Expressing appearance and guesses. 4. The tricky modifiers. And 5. Summary and formal contexts. All right, section 1. Sounding like a native, the fluency gap. Moving right along to section 2. Deadlines versus durations, mastering Medani. Okay, so we all know that annoying feeling of having the right vocabulary but still sounding just slightly off. A massive part of closing that fluency gap really comes down to precision, especially when we're talking about time. The crucial point we need to understand here is the difference between an action that continues throughout a given time versus an action that completely finishes before the time is up. This is where adding just a simple ni to the super familiar word mede completely changes the entire timeline of your sentence. Think of regular mede as an hourglass. It represents a continuous duration. If you say you're going to study mede 5 p.m., you are sitting there studying nonstop, sand slowly falling in that hourglass right up until the clock strikes 5. But the second you add that ni to make it mede ni, you are swapping out the hourglass for a strict, blaring alarm clock. You transform that duration into a hard, fast deadline. Mede ni means by. If you say you will finish your homework mede ni 5 p.m., that is a single point in time. You could finish at 3 o'clock, you could finish at 4 o'clock. It honestly doesn't matter as long as the whole task is fully, completely done before that alarm clock rings at 5. And this example brilliantly illustrates the rule. Listen to this closely. 会議までに資料は作ってください. Please prepare the documents by the meeting. Imagine you're in an office, right? And your boss hands you this task. Think about the massive difference in expectation here. They absolutely do not want you actively typing up the documents during the meeting while everyone is sitting there trying to talk. That would be a total disaster. They need the action 100% completed before the meeting even begins. The anxiety of a boss waiting for a document during a presentation is very real, and the relief of having it done beforehand is exactly what Marani guarantees. Using just made here would completely change the instruction, and honestly, it'd probably get you in major trouble. Marani firmly locks on that deadline. Okay, on to section 3, expressing appearance and guesses, the power of mitai. You can define mitai as the casual, laid-back sibling of ya desu. It's specifically used when you want to make a conversational guess based purely on what you are looking at right now in the moment. Now, if you've studied formal N4 grammar, you have likely spent a ton of time in the classroom practicing ya desu to express that something seems like something else. But step out of that classroom, take a walk into a busy Tokyo coffee shop, and you are going to hear mitai everywhere. It is literally the lifeblood of casual, everyday spoken Japanese. The emotional weight of choosing mitai over ya desu is actually pretty significant. Using ya desu with your close friends can make you sound rigid, distant, or just way too formal. Mitai warms it up. It brings you closer to the people you're talking to. Picture this. You're stepping outside, you look up, and you see these dark, heavy, rolling clouds. The wind starts to pick up, the temperature drops. That rich, immediate sensory input is exactly when you would naturally say, "Ama mitai desu." It looks like rain. Notice the difference here between knowing a hard, cold fact and just making an observation. If the meteorologist on the morning news stated there is a 100% chance of rain, you wouldn't use mitai. You use it specifically because you are reading the visual cues of those dark clouds yourself. You're making a real-time observation. Ama mitai desu. It's perfectly natural, everyday conversational Japanese. But it gets better, because beyond simple environmental guesses, mitai is an absolutely fantastic tool for metaphors. Imagine you're watching a really energetic adult just jumping around at an amusement park. You might point and playfully remark that they act like a child. Kodomo mitai desu.
This really shows how mitai goes way beyond just guessing facts. It allows you to beautifully and casually describe the quality of something by comparing it to something else entirely. If you didn't use mitai here, you'd really struggle to convey that playful nuance. You'd be stuck saying something literal and super clunky, like, they have a lot of energy, which is just kind of boring, right? Mitai instantly makes your Japanese sound more expressive and infinitely more colorful.
Let's look at Section 4, the tricky modifiers, mitai ni versus mitai na. Okay, here is where it gets slightly tricky, but the golden rule here is context. Notice this fork in the road we have. Verbs and actions take one path, while nouns take the other. Mitai ni is all about how you do an action, while mitai na focuses on what something is. When you want to modify a verb or an adjective, meaning when you want to describe the manner in which an action is being performed, you take that first path and you use mitai ni. But if you want to modify a noun directly, if you want to attach a descriptive comparison right onto an object or a person, you take the second path, and you absolutely must use mitai na. So why does Japanese separate these? Well, it's because Japanese grammar is incredibly precise about the relationships between words. Particles act like glue, right? And ni is the glue for actions, while na is the glue for things. Let's see this in action so it clicks. Notice here how mitai ni directly links Mr. Tanaka to the action verb of speaking Japanese. Tanaka-san mitai ni nihongo o hanashitai. Let's actually hear that once more, just a little bit slower. Tanaka-san mitai ni nihongo o hanashitai. We are modifying the verb hanashitai, which means want to speak. How do you want to perform this action of speaking? You want to do it like Mr. Tanaka. Because we are connecting our comparison to an action, a verb, we have to use the adverbial modifier ni, Tanaka-san mitai ni. In direct contrast, look at how mitai na connects directly to the noun face, creating this really vivid metaphor of someone with a round red face. The phrase is ringo mitai na kao. Here, kao is a noun, meaning face. We are not describing an action at all here. We are directly describing a thing. What kind of face is it? It's a face like an apple. It's a slightly funny, very cute visual, but it perfectly highlights how poetic and descriptive Japanese can be just by using simple na adjectives. Because we are linking our light comparison directly to a noun, we must use the adjectival modifier na. So always remember that fork in the road. Verbs get ni and nouns get na.
Finally, Section 5, Summary and Formal Contexts, bringing it all together.
Let's take a slow, careful look at this summary table to review these distinct mechanics. This way, you can confidently express exactly what you mean in any situation, without second-guessing your particle choices. Starting at the top, mudeni is your deadline. It signifies a fixed single point in time where a task must be completed by. Do not confuse it with the continuous hourglass of regular mude. Next, plain mitai simply means seems like or looks like, and you use it to end a sentence when making a casual, real-time observation. Then we have our two tricky modifiers. Midaina means like a, and crucially, it is followed immediately by a noun. Finally, mitai ni also translates to like a, but its usage is entirely different. It must be followed by a verb or an adjective to describe how an action is done. Locking these differences in will absolutely stop those common N4 mixing and matching errors right in their tracks.
Actually, one quick final tip before we wrap up. Always remember that while mitai is your absolute key to natural spoken Japanese, you really must revert back to yol desu when writing formal essays. This is so absolutely crucial for the JLPT and for your professional life. Mitai is wonderfully expressive for sure, but it is deeply casual. If you're writing an academic paper, a formal email to a client, or sitting for your N4 exam's written portion where a formal tone is totally expected, you have to switch gears back to yol desu. This really goes back to the deeply rooted Japanese concept of kuki wo yomu, or reading the room. Knowing the grammar is honestly only half the puzzle. Knowing the appropriate social context for that grammar, switching seamlessly between mitai and yol desu depending on exactly who you are talking to, that is what truly makes you fluent. So practice makes perfect. Jump down into the comments and tell us who you want to speak Japanese like, using your newly mastered mitai ni. Active recall is for sure the best way to make these rules stick. Think of a native speaker, an actor, maybe a friend, and build that sentence. But before you go, ask yourself a deeper question. Are you still just translating English rules in your head, or are you starting to actually see the world through a Japanese context? Mastering these 3 specific points, with their unique timelines and visual nuances, brings you one massive step closer to the latter. Keep studying, keep practicing those modifiers, and I'll catch you in the next explainer. Mata ne!